Hi, Merlyn. This is Sonia. I just wanted to stop by and comment on your discussion post, your Artifact 2. And you were right. That video is not graphically pleasing. It was kind of creepy, huh? But there was a lot of messages in that video. I'm still trying to process it, but some of the things that, I jotted down that were really interesting to me regarding that video was that there was conflict, and I know you mentioned in your discussion board that, there isn't conflict unless someone says something about it, right? But there was conflict. Clearly, it was obvious that things were not right and not as they seem. And even the son in the video was kind of looking up and observing his parents and had this look on his face like, what is this? But it wasn't addressed. It was never addressed. The elephant in the room, so to speak, was never addressed in the family. And so maybe just not addressing it just removed the realization that there was an injustice going on in the family. And so you can see how, even in the therapeutic realm, how families, like if we create genograms, we see patterns and trends in families, that you see some generational dysfunction that can be transmitted from one generation to the next. And it's kind of, in a sense, what I saw in this video. It's like a cycle, right? That takes place of becoming this model citizen, wearing this mask and not being truly your own self and your own family system. And you can see that in times with families that sometimes things are, culture, values, and ethics in our society do change. They change dramatically, and they've changed quite a bit, since I've been around. Also, from growing up and now raising my own children, my own family, and those change frequently. But how families actually relate or connect to one another, how they communicate to one another hasn't changed. And so there is this kind of element where things around us in our society change, but the way we transmit how we should function as a family doesn't change necessarily. And that's where kind of that cycle continues, And so anyway, I love our textbook, that talks about the theory, but then moves into a discussion on the Christian perspective on that theory. And so I always like to, at the end, to see what is it that, Yarhouse and Sells, think about this theory. What do they agree with, or what do they, they perceive as, aligning with Christian and biblical principles, and what maybe they lack. And so one of the things they talked about was healthy families and the capacity to form boundaries, right? And so in these boundaries, they're there to protect the family from harm that comes from outside the system and subsystems within the family structure. And it just made me think about that video that you showed. And, the boundaries weren't necessarily there. They weren't present to protect from the cycle of, abuse, really, that took place on a societal level. And also on page 137, it talked about how the Christian tradition actually extends the nature of structure. So it's, yes, there is structure within the family system, but when you incorporate kind of Christian tradition, and the book talked about how there's an inclusion of social, community, and familial characteristics that are essential for individual and systematic health. And this model that was developed based on some Rogerian perspective was based from Rogerson, in 1996, developed a model from the Old Testament scriptures called Structure of Grace. And I thought that was really interesting. To me, that sounds like something I'd like to listen to and read a little bit more about, but it talked about grace structures. And I thought that was so interesting because it says there is in that a pattern of covenant, grace, empowering, and intimacy for individuals within the family systems to thrive. And so the covenant structure offers stability and security, whereas the grace structure also provides acceptance, not based on performance or merit. So that's something that we can really communicate to our families when we incorporate kind of not only a Christian perspective, but you could also incorporate that within the context of working with secular families, people that aren't of a religious background, don't have any context to that. And we're not trying to impose our own biblical values, and proselytize, our clients that aren't Christian. But those principles of structure, grace structure, and covenant structure, we can talk to our families about stability and security and the need for acceptance that isn't based on, our performance or based on merit, but just based on, just seeing the person for who they are. And so it also talked about empowering structures that encourages growth and individuality. So I just thought that that was a really good addition to what we were reading about structural family therapy, is that we can incorporate kind of this biblical connection to structural therapy that incorporates grace, empowerment, and covenant. So thank you so much for your post. God bless.